Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Transformation Tuesday. Just going to wait for a couple of people to jump on the call. There's a few people that wanted to jump on this, so while we're waiting for those guys, hello if you're watching the replay. Welcome to Transformation Tuesday. I love doing this. I've been asked by a lot of people to share some of the insights, share some of the strategies, share some of the tools that help us transform our life. And as you probably imagine, this is kind of one of my biggest hobbies, my passions. It's kind of like a mission and obsession of mine is to share the good stuff. You know, how to overcome our fears, how to overcome our challenges, how to overcome all the limitations that present us, in life. So I thought I'd start by, and hello for the guys that are watching. If you're there, give us a shout out. Hello guys, how you doing? Greetings from beautiful Perth here in Western Australia. And if you're there watching, give us a shout out because I'm going to be covering some of the life's biggest challenges that we experience on a consistent basis. So today during the week I've got a lot of questions from people in and around fear. Hey Caroline, how you doing? I've got a few questions of people about fear. How do you tackle fear? How do you overcome fear? Because fear is one of the biggest things that holds us back in life. So I've got some nuggets of wisdom I'm going to share with you about how to overcome fear. Also guilt. Guilt's a massive one that we experience, particularly if you've had maybe a religious upbringing, anything like that. Hey Dora, how you doing? Guilt is a massive one that a lot of people experience. Guilt around sexuality, guilt around relationships, guilt around all sorts of different things. So I'm going to unpack guilt for you as well, how to overcome guilt, how to overcome fear, and also some aspects around morning rituals and how do we prepare ourselves for our day. So anyway, I'm going to get stuck into it to add as much value as I possibly can to you guys. But I'm going to start with the question that I got from Dora. Thanks so much for your question, Dora. Hey Johnny, how you doing, legend? Good to see you here, brother. And if you guys have got any questions here as well, anything that comes to mind, any of your life's biggest challenges, this is what we're here to do. We're here to hack life. We're here to solve life's biggest challenges. So I'm going to dive into this first question I've got here from Dora. Thank you so much for the question, Dora. Dora asks, my question is around morals. In particular, when you feel that a moral you once had no longer serves you and there's guilt and uncertainty around changing it. Beautiful question. Thank you, Dora. For those that are watching, you may or may not relate to guilt. Now, again, when we talk about morals, we've got to be very, very careful here that we are choosing our morals based on a place of authenticity. Because for a lot of people, they inherit their morals from their parents, from society, from religion, and you guys might relate. Give us a yes if you can relate to maybe some of your morals that you've got from your parents, your upbringing, your religion, if you were brought up in a religious household. I certainly was brought up in a religious household, and there was a lot of religious baggage in terms of guilt I had to offload. So, Dora, the way I'm going to start by answering that question is recognizing if there is any aspects of that guilt is being created from dogma, from religion, from conditioning, from what society says you should and shouldn't do, right? For example, religion has a lot of dogma in and around what you should and shouldn't do. Thanks, Carolyn. I've been growing my winter coat. Religion can have a lot of negative effects about telling us what we should and shouldn't do. Very judgmental, like spiritual judgment. So it's important to recognize where that guilt is coming from. And if it's coming from a genuine, authentic place, because I want to explain what guilt actually is, because a lot of people don't even understand what guilt is or how it is. So let's unpack guilt. First of all, guilt is a sense or a feeling of unease based around that we think we've done something wrong. We think we've either violated someone's boundaries, we think we've actually done something wrong. Now, again, by whose rules? There isn't really a rule book in life around what's right and what's wrong. So our whole guilt is just simply a conditioned, made up frame of reference about what's right, what's wrong. Hey Zach, how you going, brother? You. Yeah, Dora. Yes, the original moral was based on what religion said. Okay, cool. Well, look, I had a feeling about that because a lot of our guilt that we experience is based around religion. And a lot of the teachings of religion, there are some great teachings in religion. There are also some very disempowering teachings in religion. So we've got to be very, very careful about if what we're believing and if the morals that we've chosen to subscribe to, if they're coming from a place of dogma and ego and fear, whether they're coming from a genuine place of authentic expression of love and kindness and compassion and just generally making the world a better place. So look, for example, if there's guilt in it, and feel free to jump in, guys, if you've got some examples of where you may have felt guilt before, please drop it in the comments. And Dora, if you've got some other examples, let me know, fill me in. Guilt is something like, for example, no sex before marriage, right? So if you're anything like me, because I had a very religious upbringing, I thought when I looked at the whole thing about sex before marriage, I thought, oh gee, that's wrong. I can't be doing that, right? So therefore, any expression of intimacy with a partner in public, anything that involved romantic expression in public, it was like, oh, this is kind of awkward. And again, the same thing in our family upbringing. We never experienced our mother and father. They didn't really express a lot of intimacy in public. So I learned, okay, expressing intimacy in public, sex before marriage, that's all a no-go. That's like a not to be done. Now again, this is all just made up. We're just making up the rules as we go. Now who's to say it's right or wrong? There is no right or wrong, there's just different perspectives. So, hey Daddy, welcome there, brother. So my suggestion would be become acutely aware of where the source of that guilt is coming from and recognize, is it actually valid? Is it actually accurate? Because guilt is there, like guilt is an emotion, is an action signal. The reason why we experience guilt is to communicate to us, oh, shit, I've done something wrong. Now we've got to check in and see, is that guilt actually accurate? Is that guilt based on something like it? And this is the thing, is you'll know if the guilt is actually coming from a place of accuracy by checking in and saying, well, what am I actually feeling guilty about? Now, for example, if you've driven a car and you've literally, I don't know, for example, let's just say you smashed into someone else's car and you've just wrecked their day, right? You might experience a sense of guilt there, which might be like, okay, cool, yeah, I kind of done the wrong thing. I kind of feel a bit guilty. Whereas if you're experiencing guilt around something that is like, feeling guilty about having sex before marriage when you're not actually religious, and that's something that you've kind of inherited from someone else, then you've kind of inherited, if you're incongruent because you've been conditioned into believing that, kind of don't believe it. So it's kind of like a legacy belief that's been imprinted through our parents. Hey brother, good to see you here. So it's really important to check in to see, well, what's the source of that guilt? And is that, so guilt is an action signal that's getting us to sort of check in and say, well, hey, you're breaking some kind of rule. Let's check in and see if it's valid. So that's the first thing, is recognize if there's any merit to actually feeling guilt and whether it's valid. So the next question was, how do you change it? Well, the most important thing around guilt is recognize we need to update our rule book. We need to update our set of rules, because guilt is created by creating a set of rules where we identify right and wrong. Right and wrong. That's how guilt gets created. So what we want to do is we want to create a very, very flexible rule book, a rule book that empowers us, where we only experience guilt when we commit something by our own definition is negative, is disempowering, is against our own set of rules. So we need to be very, very clear about how we've defined and how we've written our own rule book. So when we do experience guilt, we do it deliberately. We go, yeah, I actually violated my own rules there and I'm feeling guilty, and it's okay to feel guilt because I violated my own rules. Now, again, guilt is an emotion that's there to give us an action signal, right? Now, again, say for example, if you've cheated on someone, right? Or if you cheated on your partner, right? Again, probably a valid experience to experience the emotion of guilt if you've done something that violates your own rules. Now, again, this is where we need to have very, very clear rules, either clear rules or flexible rules in and around guilt. So when we do feel guilt, it's like, okay, cool, I'm feeling guilt because of a valid reason. Now, I'll give you another example. A lot of mothers experience guilt. Hey, Maria. Hey, Mariana. How are you going there? Yeah, good to see you. A lot of mothers, for example, can experience guilt, right, if they prioritize themselves, right? Now, a lot of mothers are so flat out looking after the family. When it comes to, okay, making time for me, time for exercising, time to stay healthy, time to prioritize myself, they feel guilty, right, for not prioritizing the family. Now, is that a valid form of guilt? Well, look, it's case dependent, but again, I would say that mothers actually prioritizing themselves to a point where they actually have a life, where they have healthy experiences. They're actually going and having a life, having a social life, spending time and money on themselves. I think that's fantastic. So again, it's recognizing where the guilt is programmed and whether guilt is actually accurate or valid, or whether it's just simply a construction or illusion and it's invalid based on all the conditioning and all the dogma of what we've grown up to believing. So Anyway, it is a grey area there as to what the rules are that have created guilt, but just recognize that there is a rule book there beneath that sits beneath all this that's creating the guilt, that's driving the guilt. So in terms of follow-up, I would definitely recommend, Dora, and I know that you've been trained in timeline therapy, I would definitely recommend contacting one of the people you studied with in your NLP practitioner course. Do some timeline therapy to remove the emotion of guilt. Guilt can be removed literally, as you may or may not have experienced, but guilt can be removed from your body because, again, your emotions are stored actually in your body, and there's a combination there of how your memories are stored holographically through your body. And when you actually go through a process of timeline therapy, you release the guilt and you actually will physically feel that in your body. So I would suggest going through a process of timeline therapy to remove the guilt, but also then becoming conscious of your rules around guilt. So what triggers you, what causes your guilt, and then you can check in and review your rule book and go, hang on, should I actually be feeling guilty about that? And then the next step is when you say, no, cool, I need to create a new rule book. That's when you take action. Now, you only embody something once you take action. You can only transform your belief system, change your habits, change your behavior when you actually take new action. So we can theorize and hypothesize and we can speak about this, but until we actually make a new decision to take new action, nothing's going to change. And the belief system and the thought patterns are still going to be retained. So that would be my suggestion, is go through those processes and take new action, and then you watch that guilt will start to evaporate or start to dissolve. I trust that answers you. Let me know if that answers your question, Dora. All right, guys, I'm going to jump on to the next one here, which is, what is the cause of fear? I get this one a lot. People ask me all the time, Chris, I'm experiencing fear in this. What is fear? Hey, Dora, yeah, rewrite your rules. Yeah, cool. I think that'll give you a lot of awareness around that. So a lot of people ask me, what is fear? Well, let's understand, well, what is fear? Well, fear is an emotion, right? So fear is an emotion, and it's an emotion that we experience which is based on a future-based scenario, so something happening in the future which is going to be unpleasant. So we have if you like, we've got a reaction to or an apprehension of or a level of anxiety about something that's going to happen. So we're predicting the future. Now, as Zig Ziglar says, fear is false evidence appearing real, right? So we need to understand that fear is simply our imagination. We're letting our imagination run wild, because all we're now doing is we're imagining a future where there's a negative meaning, there's a negative experience, and there's something that's disempowering. Now, look, there are times when fear actually serves us. So there are times when we're actually valid to experience a level of fear, right? Like, say, for example, if you're walking down a dark alleyway at like 3 a.m. and there's some really suspicious folks following after you, right? And you're on your own and you've maybe had a couple of drinks and it's kind of a vulnerable situation, probably valid to experience an emotion of fear in that moment, because it's like, well, this is actually not really safe. Now, if we've got something like, say, for example, public speaking, and we're petrified of public speaking, well, again, we can check in and go, well, hang on, is my experience of fear right now actually, like, is it actually worth it? Like, is it actually giving me any action signals that are useful? Now, give us some shout outs, guys, if you can relate to maybe experiencing fear of public speaking or fear of something like that, which is kind of irrational. Now, you've probably heard the statistic that more people are afraid of dying than they are more people are afraid of public speaking than they are of dying. Now, again, this is a classic example of an irrational fear, where what we're now doing is we're playing out movies in our mind about the worst case scenario. And what we're now doing is we're now making it mean X, Y, and Z. We're making it mean this is going to happen, that's going to happen, it's going to be the end of the world. And what we typically do is we're exaggerating what the impact is going to be. Now, again, fear is simply imagination. Fear is imagining what may happen. And it's the same as fear and anxiety. They come from the same family of emotions. It is essentially imagining a negative outcome sometime in the future that's not going successfully. That's what fear is, that's what anxiety is. Now, the way to overcome fear and anxiety is a really simple mind hack that you can do. And it's really simple, and all you do is you close your eyes and you just imagine that you've already gone out 5 minutes after the successful completion of that event, whatever it is, and you imagine that it's gone successfully. You actually visualize it in your mind, you create a picture, and you play a video in your mind. And after that event's played successfully in your mind, in the movie of your mind, you imagine then looking back toward now, after it's happened, and just imagine what it was like, all the learnings, all the lessons, all the realizations, and all the things you needed to do to get to that point. And then what that'll give you is it'll give you a sense that it's already been successfully completed. So you can't experience fear or anxiety around something that's already happened, right? So anxiety, a classic example of anxiety, is the way that people create anxiety is they're imagining a negative future for themselves. If you imagine a positive future for yourself, that creates excitement. So the only difference between anxiety and excitement is just whether you're imagining a positive outcome or a negative outcome. It's really quite simple. Either way, we're using our imagination to create this emotion. So next time when you say you're experiencing stress, which is the achiever's word for fear, stress, anxiety, or fear, just recognize that all you're doing in your mind is you're playing a movie in your mind, a series of pictures about imagining what that future is going to be. And it's typically, if you're experiencing fear, anxiety, or stress, it's simply playing a negative movie in our mind. Now, here's the key. We've got to recognize that all these movies that we're playing in our mind about imagining our future, they're all just made up. It's all just imagination. But what we're doing is we're creating pictures, sounds, and we've got internal dialogue going in our mind about exactly what's actually playing and what's going to happen. So that's what's firing and that's what's creating our emotion. If we imagine a positive future for ourselves, guess what? We create excitement. If we imagine a negative future, we create fear and anxiety. It's really quite simple. So for those of you that are wanting to understand more about how to release fear and anxiety, because I know this is a big one that a lot of people experience. Hey Karen, thank you. For a lot of people that experience fear and anxiety, is a really amazing, really simple and really clever way of releasing anxiety and fear. Now, again, it relates back to what I was speaking before about guilt. You can release fear and anxiety through doing that process that I just mentioned. But there's also some processes from timeline therapy that I teach in my training courses where you can release fear and anxiety in the simple one that I gave you there is about 2 minutes. And there's another one that's a little bit longer, which is timeline therapy, which is releasing a negative emotion, which is about 10 minutes. So you can completely release anxiety and fear on an event, on an experience that's been with you for an incredibly long period of time. Now, again, another classic example is, hey, Maddie, how you doing, brother? Another example is phobias. And if anyone here has a phobia, just give me a shout out. I might even be able to pop you on live and actually help you with it. Phobias are the simplest of fears to cure. Like phobias literally take about between 2 and 5 minutes to help someone overcome a phobia. And again, it's really quite simple because what we're doing is we're creating pictures in our mind that trigger the fear, that trigger the anxiety, that trigger that sensation. So I'm just going to jump on a couple more of these questions because I want to add, I want to just answer a few more of these questions. I've had a couple of questions from people on how do you make great decisions. Now, this is a good one because I think a lot of people can relate to, sometimes in life it sometimes feels like, geez, how do I make, sometimes we make great decisions, sometimes we make not so great decisions, and we kind of wonder, well, what was I doing? What state was I in? How do I consistently make great decisions? So I just want to start by saying that when we get clear on what is important to us, which is also known as our core values, when we're clear on our values, it's easy to make decisions. Now, I'll say that again. When we are clear on our values, it's easy to make great decisions. So what that means is that it means that our values are simply a hierarchy of all the things in our life that's important. For example, family, career, business, money, health, etc., those kinds of things. Now, when we're very, very clear on those values and we're consciously aware of those values, because most people are unconscious of their values because they're a filter, they're a programming that we've grown up with in our life. Now, by all the conditioning, all the experiences and all the everything that's happened in our life till now programs us with a values hierarchy, which is simply an ordered list of things in our life that's most important all the way down to least important. Now, when you become super conscious and highly conscious of what your values criteria is, it's very, very easy to make decisions. Because in your mind you go, cool, I know the most important thing in my life might be family, and it might be health, and then it might be career, right? So based on that, say if that's your values hierarchy, it becomes much more easier to make a decision because you actually know what the criteria are. You actually know ultimately what's important. Now, I've said this before, but failure in life is not knowing what's important. Success in life is knowing what's important and doing something about it. So becoming aware of your values hierarchy, which is your unconscious programming, it's how you make decisions. It's what drives you. It's ultimately your internal emotional compass. When you become highly aware of your values, you're able to make more conscious decisions. You're able to make faster decisions, and you're able to be aware that your decision right now is meeting your values. So straight away you speed up your decision-making process. And what we're also able to do is recognize if there's conflicts in values. Now, I'll give you a classic example of a conflict in values. One of the most common values conflicts is people value money and they value freedom. Two classic values conflicts like this. Because, great, I want all this time off to go traveling and have all this time away and spend time with my family. And then I also want money so that I can also spend to actually buy the holiday, to actually spend money on the family. So this is a classic conflict. Now again, this is a conflict that's easily resolved. Now it's actually quite simple with some tools and techniques from neurolinguistic programming and timeline therapy and hypnosis. It's really quite simple. So we just need to become aware of that conflict and recognize, well, actually, both of those two values are actually in alignment once we actually once we actually start to think about them a little bit differently, because we recognize that both of those values are wanting to ultimately achieve the same thing. So anyway, when you get super clear on your values, that's one of the fastest ways to make better decisions, become very, very clear with decision making. But also recognizing sometimes in decision making we do overwhelm or we do confusion. Now the way that we do confusion, the way we do overwhelm, is when we've got way too many options, or that maybe there's a really big chunk of information and we haven't actually broken it down into bite-sized chunks. So if you've got a really big decision that you're wanting to make, hey Dory, yes, parts integration is one. That's a phenomenal way. Also limiting decisions, releasing limiting decisions and negative emotions. So again, timeline therapy techniques and parts integrations is the way to release the values conflict. As well as there's a lot of other techniques which we'll go into in your training course when we get there. Where was I, guys? What was I talking about? That's right. Okay, cool. So we're really talking about when you want to make better decisions, it's really important to get clear on your values. So that's all I want to say about decision making, guys. If you do want to find out what your core values are, it's really simple. All you need to do, and I suggest you do this with a partner, you could do this with a coach, you can actually get someone to actually go through this process with you, and it's called a values elicitation. And all you simply do is you pick a part of life. It might be life in general, or it might be relationships, or it might be career. And all you do is you ask yourself, or you get your partner to ask you this question. You say, in the context of family or in the context of career, what's important to you? Now, what you're going to do is your brain is going to do a brain dump of all the things that are important to you. So for example, in the context of something like, let's go with relationships. When you elicit your values in the context of your relationship, it might be things like, okay, intimacy, communication, fairness, openness, trust, honesty, support, all those kinds of things. So you'll actually elicit all the different things that are important to you in the context of a relationship. Now what you'll do is you'll keep going until you exhaust all the options. So it's almost like your brain will dump everything in your mind, you'll get it all on paper, and then you go, okay, cool. Now you ask a question again. And what you do is it's like literally going into the second page of Google, and it's searching, you search your unconscious mind and it digs out all these other values. So now you get more. Then you ask a third time, what's important to you in the context of relationship? You go for another search in your internal software, internal filing system, and you'll come out with the remainder. Now what you'll end up with is a list. That's your values hierarchy. Now that is essentially your unconscious programming, which you are now conscious of. It was stored in your unconscious mind. It's kind of saved all the way down. It's almost like thinking your conscious mind is kind of like the first page of Google search results. Your unconscious mind is all the 1 million Google search page results behind that you're not aware of, but it's still driving your decisions. So I think that's maybe a cool way to sort of think about your unconscious mind. Now, once you become aware of those values, what you then do is you then become aware of and you actually rank them. You actually list most important all the way to least important. So you actually just look through the list and you just number them. What's the most important? That one, maybe trust, then intimacy, then support, communication, and you just number them, 1 being most important, all the way down to 10 or 20 if you've got 20 different core values around relationship, to 20 meaning least important. That's the way to create what's known as your values hierarchy. Now that's like a recipe list, or like it's a sequenced order of all the things that are important to you from most important to least important. Now when you become aware of that, particularly in the context of relationship, you understand what's driving you. It's literally like it's your DNA, if you like, about what's actually driving you, what's motivating you, what's your internal emotional compass in that context of life. So that's really important. And it's such a simple process. Admittedly, like you need to get someone to guide you through it, and you've got to do a full brain dump to kind of get it out. But once you get that, and once you get that list and you become conscious of it, it's a game changer. because you kind of know what's actually driving you. So anyway, that's a little bit on core values, and core values are incredibly important. And that's something that once you become acutely aware of your core values in each of the different contexts of life, you're able to make far more empowering decisions, and you're just able to actually understand. It's a great self-awareness tool because you become aware of what's driving your core. You can also change your values. I'll probably do another video at some point about how do you start to change your values, because a lot of people are going through shifts in their life. If anyone here watching, you might be going through a process in life at the moment where what was important to you, say maybe 5 years ago, is now not so important to you now. All right, now that's a natural shift. We go through shifts in life where we change our value sets, we change our priorities, and we go through a shift. Now, for example, I went through a shift a number of years ago where I was in a job where I was earning good money. It was great, but I started recognizing, well, look, there's got to be more to life. And some of you might have a similar experience to this. You get to a point in life where it's like, well, look, there's got to be more than just the money. And so I was searching for more. My values were changing. I was wanting to experience contribution. I was wanting to experience growth. I was wanting to experience meaning in my life, as opposed to just existing and just earning money and just going traveling and spending on that. So I kind of shifted. So again, that's an example of when your values shift, your whole entire world starts to shift. And when you become aware of those values, it's powerful. It's empowering because you understand what's the programming that's going on that's causing the decisions, and that's causing, in some cases, causing some conflict. The next question I got here is, how do you stay disciplined? This is from Dave. How do you stay disciplined when there's so many distractions in life and when life gets challenging? Well, that's an epic question, Dave. I like to answer that by saying that, look, life is always going to have distractions. Life is always going to have complexity. Life is always going to throw curveballs at us. So, look, the important thing is recognizing we've got to get clear on ultimately what's our why. And this is spoken about. If you've read any of the books by Simon Sinek, and talking about purpose, we've got to understand that when we have a big enough why, we can achieve any how. When we actually have a really strong and profound sense of purpose behind what we're doing, we can overcome anything. That sense of purpose and that strong sense of why we're doing something in any context in life, that's going to get us through the hard times. That's going to help us overcome those days when we don't feel like getting out of bed. That's going to help us overcome the time when the naysayers come in and they start saying, no, you can't do that. No, that's impossible. What do you mean start your own business? You can't do that. Thanks for the love, Luke. So it's really important to recognize that when we have a deep embedded sense of purpose and mission and a sense of why we're doing what we're doing, that is the way to, if you like, completely hack our brain chemistry and our wiring and our thought patterns and our belief system to really experience a more compelling version of our future, because that's what it's doing. When we have a really strong why, what we're actually doing unconsciously is we're imagining that future. We're imagining, oh my God, this is going to be something amazing I'm going to create. And we become emotionally attached to it. Now, when we become emotionally attached to an outcome and we have that supercharged why, that is what creates determination. That's what creates resilience. That's what creates emotional toughness, because it gets us through the hard times. Having a massive why is like having a big V8 engine, right? Big V8 engine. Now, if you haven't got a why at all, it's like you've got a big V8 car, but there's no engine in the front of over the bonnet. So supercharge your why, upgrade your why about your purpose, your mission, your sense of why you're here in this life. And that will help you, give you the resilience, the determination, the mental toughness to actually push through. Because if we don't even know why we're doing something, if there's no sense of purpose, if there's no reason why we're doing something, why bother? When life gets tough, it's just like, well, screw this, it's too hard. So we need to make sure our why outweighs the temporary pain, the discomfort, and the challenge that's going to be coming, right? We're going to have to walk in life. If we wanted to live life on our terms and actually experience an incredible life, we're going to have to walk through some pretty fucking dark tunnels, right? Life is going to challenge us. Life is going to throw everything at us. And I believe that life is happening for us. It's happening through us. It's giving everything that we need to build us into the most empowered, most amazing version of ourselves. And I think life gives us only what we're ready to handle. Now, I think life also gives us action signals. So if we're doing something over and over and over, maybe expecting a different result, then what are we going to experience? Probably going to experience frustration. Probably going to experience resistance. So again, I think it's really important to always recognize and check in to see how we're doing in life, and also check in and make sure, well, how strong is our sense of mission, our purpose, and our resolve, and our why. So For those of you that want a really awesome exercise on how to beef up your why, how to really give yourself a greater sense of purpose, I'm going to give you an exercise to do which is really powerful, and it's how to discover your purpose in 20 minutes. And this was an exercise that I learned from one of my mentors, Steve Pavlina. Now, all you do is you start with a blank piece of paper. Now, at the top of the piece of paper, you just say, "Why am I here?" Which is another version of saying, "What is my purpose?" Now, what you do is you want to get your purpose so it's written as a statement. Now, this could be one line, this could be a paragraph, this could be 20 pages, but ultimately, you want to end up with a phrase that resonates to your core. You want to end up with a phrase that is so incredibly powerful and so incredibly moving that it actually brings you to tears. Tears of joy, tears of love. So, for example, I'll give you an example. So what you might do is you might start writing out your purpose statement, which is, okay, well, maybe to be happy and to live a great life, right? You then ask, okay, well, is that the best I can do? How about we go, okay, what about to live an incredibly abundant life where I'm making a massive difference in the world, where I get to turn up every day, living my dream and making an impact? That's pretty cool. Okay, great. So you basically take each statement and then build on it and just keep supercharging it, make it even bigger and brighter, make it more empowering, more emotionally juicy, until you eventually get to a point where you've actually got a full, complete purpose statement where you're like, when you read it, it gives you goosebumps. It brings you to tears of joy. And so I'll share my purpose statement with you. And again, the big myth about purpose is that you get one purpose in life and that's it. That's horseshit, right? That's the biggest myth ever. We have multiple purposes. Our purpose is constantly evolving. Hey, Daniel, good to see you here, brother. So the whole concept of purpose is give yourself permission to allow your purpose in life to evolve, and use this exercise as not as a definitive black and white thing of, okay, I've now got my purpose, so that's it, but use it as a self-awareness tool to help you recognize why you're here, because our purpose in life is to figure out why we're here. Now, this exercise is going to help you do that. So the idea is you keep going through and revising that purpose statement over again, over and over and over and over again, until you get to the point where it's like, oh my God, I now feel resonating. I feel like I'm actually tuned into why I'm truly here. Hey, Daniel, thanks, brother. It's important that people understand why they're here in this life. Otherwise, if you're watching this video and you don't have clarity on why you're here, or your purpose, or your mission, or a sense of what it is that you were born to do in this life and to create, to give, to do, and to have, and to share, then there's a huge chunk of your life that you're missing out on having that emotional juice in life. Now, again, I'm just sharing from personal experience, like before I came across this concept of purpose, look, I was just living day to day. I wasn't even aware of that there's such a thing existed. So I just thought, well, look, I'm just surviving. I'm just getting through my week. Whereas when you create a purpose, a sense of mission, a sense of vision, a sense of why the fuck am I here? It's like, oh my God, I'm actually here to do something. So for me now, one of the biggest sources of inspiration for me is making a difference in the world. It's being a role model and a leader for my nieces and for my nephew, and if I'm lucky enough to have kids one day. But I'll leave you with the purpose statement that I ended up with, which to this day I still very much resonate with, and it's been evolving and shifting. But for me, the purpose of my life is to live consciously and courageously in the moment with vitality and gratitude and passion, and to seek to experience and share love, joy, and fun, to embrace the journey of life as this ultimate adventure and a great mystery, and to constantly inspire and empower others to activate what they are born to do here in life, and to make a massive positive difference in the world. So for me, that's like this epic purpose statement it just like literally gives me goosebumps when I actually say that, because I know exactly who and what I am and what I'm here to do. Now, is that going to change over time? Of course. It's changed about 50 times since I've done that exercise. But each time I go through it and say it, I come up with a better way of expressing it, finding out, hang on, what's a more authentic version of that? Am I just doing that to look good, or am I doing that because it's been conditioned into me? Or am I doing that because I'm coming from heart space and I truly want to give that to the world, and that's my expression of who I am? So when you do this purpose statement exercise, make sure you're coming from a very connected heart space centered place, where you're not doing it to impress someone, you're not doing it to look good, you're not doing it because your parents said this was a good thing. You're doing it because it feels good for you. So be selfish in a way with this purpose statement exercise. Now, another thing I just want to add to that is when it comes to contribution, I just want to share that I think it's really important when we're actually coming from a place of contribution that we recognize that the reason why we contribute is because we actually feel something great ourselves from contributing. So for me, when I first started wanting to contribute and make a difference in the world, I wasn't actually coming from the most genuine place, because I was coming from a place of just wanting to impact millions of lives and wanting to save the world. Now that's all well and good, but I wasn't stemming from a place of authenticity. I wasn't stemming from a place of true connection when I actually said that. Whereas now when I say that, it's like, well, I want to do that because I enjoy it. Like, yes, it's a bonus, I get to transform people's lives, but I'm actually selfishly owning that the reason why I do what I do is because I feel amazing. I feel great when I help people. I feel like, coaching and mentoring people, I feel amazing. So I do it because I feel amazing. It's also great because the byproduct of that is also beautiful, because it empowers people to transform their life. But ultimately owning that, cool, I'm doing this for me. Right? And I think when we can become functionally selfish, so to speak, like that, I think that's a pretty cool way to be. Anyway, that's just a little bit about my story. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much... thanks, Dora. Appreciate that. I want to wrap it up there, guys, because I just want to keep this short and sharp. If any of you guys that have got questions about purpose, you've got questions about decision-making, about values, fear, anxiety, hurt, guilt, please send me some comments. And if you've got other questions about other areas of life, please send them through as well. This is a regular Tuesday night TV slot. So for those that have got value, please tune in each Tuesday night. Ask questions. I'm happy to share everything that I know with you guys. I'm an open book. Whatever questions you got, I'm happy to give you the best that I've got. Anyway, guys, trust that's been useful. I look forward to seeing you guys again next Tuesday. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Dora. Thank you, Daniel. Hey, we've also got Steve, Erin. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Joe, Dora, Asha. You guys are all legends. Matt, Karen. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I love you guys, and please stay tuned for next Tuesday when we've got more Transformation Tuesday. Lots of love. Wishing you guys a fantastic week, and I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Have a great week. See you guys.